Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel iDeea. My name is Deea, and today I have some winter reading recommendations for you. Some books that feel wintry. They are not necessarily Christmassy, they are wintry kind of reads. We'll do Christmas closer to the time, but I wanted to do this. We just, had a weekend where we fell back with our clocks and it's feeling darker outside earlier and all of that. It's currently in the evening and I don't think I'm going to have much daylight left, so let's jump in and get this going. So as I said, we are going to be going over some books that I think are wonderful for winter. I tried really hard to come up with some books that were not The Snow Child and not A Christmas Carol and not Little Women or Small Things Like These or Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Things that most people won't have heard of yet, or maybe they've heard of, but they just haven't read them. And so let's jump in. So the first one I have for you is A Gathering of Days. This is by Joan Blos, and it is a New England girls' journal in the 1800s, and it starts out in the winter. There's a little bit of plot to it, just barely. Is a little bit of a heart tug kind of book, and yet there's also just this kind of quiet spirit that our heroine Catherine has in this story, and I just think it's wonderful. I think it ends in December. I don't think a lot of people think about as a winter book, but a lot of the book takes place in the wintertime. And it's very much, you feel the cold in it, and that is A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. We get a lot of like the Secret Garden on spring recommendations, but not a lot of people think to recommend this book for winter. And a very large portion of the story takes place with Sarah in the wintertime in this story. So, typical Frances Hodgson Burnett story in the fact that there is a girl who could be an orphan, might be an orphan, might not be an orphan, goes from rich to poor, those kinds of things. So just a wonderful, wonderful read for wintertime. A Winter Cottage by Ryrie, Brink. I do not have this book in my hand at the moment. I can't remember who I lent it out to. So if it was you, send it back my way. Winter Cottage by Ryrie, Brink is about a family who have fallen on hard times, and as they are kind of making their way across America looking for work and such, a snowstorm comes up and they end up in a remote area. I want to say Wisconsin, maybe Michigan, upper Michigan, in a summer cottage that it's a summer home on the lake, and they use it as their winter home. And it's just a really beautiful, quiet story. But it's family, and it feels extra special because they don't have a lot of money. They're all really banding together to make the best of a very difficult situation. Podkin One Ear. This is by Kieran Larwood. I read this just this year and earlier this year, and it also is very much a snowy, wintry, unlikely hero kind of book. And the premise is basically that Podkin's family is one of many Warrens that are getting ready to celebrate kind of their Christmas, and something happens where they end up having to flee and are separated from their family, and it's Podkin, his sister, and his baby brother. And just the way that they overcome, and the way that they also become kind of heroes to rabbit kind. Podkin One Ear. First book in the Longborough series. I have, but I only have it in a bind up, and I do have a copy that has been illustrated. I have that ordered and it is coming. I got it off of eBay. So it's coming, but it's not here yet. So that is The Selfish Giant by Oscar Wilde. And I don't know how many people think of this one as a winter read either, but the winter in this story has quite an impact on the story. So I think that it's very much a winter cold kind of a book. And then a couple that I wouldn't necessarily call children's reads, but I also wouldn't call them adult. Right. Emily Winfield Martin. Snow and Rose are sisters. This is kind of a take on the Brothers Grimm Snow White, Rose Red. And so very much a fall into winter and then onward. A friend that they meet that seems to be in danger. Fantastic book. Kingdom Far and Clear, which is the trilogy of Swan Lake that Mark Helprin wrote and Chris Van Allsburg illustrated. So the illustrations are the reason why I picked the book up initially. But we have Swan Lake, A City in Winter, and what is the final book called? I can't remember. I'll put them up here though. They're packed away currently in my Christmas decorations, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. I haven't quite pulled the Christmas decorations out. So anyway, this is about a usurper of a kingdom and the heir to the throne who is secreted away, and she knows nothing of her heritage. And so she is raised outside of the kingdom, unknown to the usurper, and she kind of finds out some things one snowy winter's night and ends up going to try to find out more. And so the whole story is about kind of the fall of the kingdom, the rise of the usurper, and then the princess coming back to her throne and taking back her kingdom. And absolutely wonderful, just fantastic. The only Mark Helprin books, there's 3 of them, the only 3 books by Helprin I have ever read that I have liked. James Herriot's animal stories. I think a lot of people think of All Creatures Great and Small, all of those ones. They think of Herriot for those books, and those are wonderful and they are cozy. But I wanted to tell you that there are at least 3 stories in here that I can remember that are specifically set in winter, that are set around these animals. I think 2 of them are about sheep and 1 of them might be about a dog. But this is also illustrated. This is illustrated by Leslie Holmes, and it's wonderful. And these could also be read to children. James Herriot sometimes is a little graphic in the way that he tells what is happening with an animal that he is the veterinarian for. But I don't think that it's off-putting in any way. At least it wasn't for me. I grew up on these stories. And so anyway, animal stories, James Herriot. And a couple that I do not own. One is Sisters of the Winter Wood. This is a retelling of The Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. This one is by Rena Rossner. And like I said, retelling of the Goblin Market, reimagining of it in a little way, and just as unsettling and just as eerie. So if you find the Goblin Market too disturbing, probably shouldn't read Sisters of the Winter Wood. But if you enjoy that atmosphere, this one amps it up just a little bit, and it's a complete story instead of a poem. And then this one I actually own, but I didn't want to dig it out. It's in a pile, kind of acting as a lift for my candlesticks and my other things. So I didn't want to like pull it out of the stack. And that is Kristin Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset. This is about as wintry of a read as you can get. It is hard to read sometimes, and yet at the same time, absolutely beautiful story. And it's just packed full of so many things. Every genre that you can imagine is wrapped up in Kristin Lavransdatter. You're going to get a little bit of fantasy because it's Norse and it's those beliefs in some ways. You are going to definitely get family drama. It is a Bildungsroman as far as coming of age goes. It is a little bit of romance. It is, if you can call it that. It is about history, politics. There's just so much that is wrapped up in this book. And to be honest, when I read the first one, I did not think I was going to like it. And I ended up, by the end of the last book, it's divided into 3 books. By the end of the 3rd book, I didn't want it to end. I wished it would have gone on a little bit longer. Silas Marner. So this is George Elliot. Main event of the story takes place in winter. So this is about an older man who is accused of something, and as a result, he moves away to someplace very remote where nobody knows him, and he kind of just keeps to himself and gets on with life and is a little bitter. And then he has the main event of the story happens, and it completely changes his life, and it is absolutely wonderful. And this was probably the very first Victorian book I ever read. I don't know if that's completely true, but it's the one that I have the most vivid memory of from being little and having books read to me and that kind of thing. My grandfather read this to me. It is simple, but I hope that people will take the time to really try to understand that there's something behind the simplicity. So, Silas Marner. Niall Williams, The Time of the Child. This is, if you liked Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These and Foster, this has the same feel and a similar storyline or through line, but it is a bigger novel, a larger book, and it gives you more time with the characters. And I don't know which one was written first. I don't honestly care. I just loved my time in this story. So it is about a vicar and his daughter, and the daughter is unmarried, but she is, well into the marriageable age, but she is unmarried. And one day someone shows up at the vicarage with a baby, and the story goes from there. I'm not going to tell you anything more about it, but this is such a beautiful story about community, about family, about not visiting the sins of the fathers upon the children. It just so many things that are truly, truly beautiful. And it does take place in the wintertime. This is not the only one of her books that I could have put on this list, but because there's also a main event that kind of happens in the winter, I decided to put this one on here. And it's also really one of my favorites of hers, and that is Children of My Heart by Gabrielle Waugh. She writes a sense of place so well, and her characters are truly alive, and it is fascinating to me that she can do that. This is about a young teacher and the different schools and the different children that she encounters in those first years of teaching. There were so many moments in here where I was like, what is happening? I wanted to embrace so many of these children. I wanted to sit down with her and say, well done. I wanted to sit down with her and shake her and say, what are you thinking? But there were just so many moments that were truly, truly lovely. Road Past Altamont also has some winter scenes in it. It's even shorter than this one. The one that I just read, The Hidden Mountain, that one also has some very, very palpable winter scenes in it. And these are all taking place in Canada, Manitoba. All of Gabrielle Wa's stories that I have read have been wonderful. But this one, Road Past Altamont especially, I just really loved both of them. This one, though, is the one that I think I would recommend for winter. This is a funny one to recommend, maybe, but this past summer, I read with Sasha the sequel to My Father's Glory by Marcel Pagnol, and it is My Mother's Castle. And although the probably the bulk of the story does not take place in winter, there are two scenes in particular that I can think of where things are getting very cold, or they are very cold, and you feel it right along with the characters. And they also prepare for Christmas in this story, and there's just some really, really beautiful moments, and the scenes that you come across are wonderful. Not to mention the fact that he and his little brother and their little sister are just, they're such children. And it's so much fun and just really lovely. What a lovely story. I am going to recommend Our Mutual Friend. And that is because it opens in winter on a very icy river, and a death almost off the bat. So I think that Our Mutual Friend is really underrated when it comes to Dickens novels, and it has some of the most beautiful characters in it. So I would recommend that one for winter. Then what would be a recommendations list for winter if it was not for having some Russian literature on here? So this is a Pushkin Press copy of A Bad Business, Essential Stories by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And the ones in here that I would recommend for winter are The Crocodile, Peasant Mary, and The Christmas Tree, or the Heavenly Tree. The Heavenly Tree. Those three in here, I think especially. I think the whole collection is wonderful, but the three that I would recommend for wintertime would be those three. But don't not read the rest of them, because this collection is really, really wonderful. And then also Pushkin short stories. I have been reading through this with my friend Courtney from Courtney Reads, and we just read The Snowstorm in here, and it was wonderful. What a ride that story was. I just think that Pushkin is amazing with the stories that he, the way that he crafts a story, and the fact that he doesn't give you all the answers and allows you to just really kind of think, ponder, question, all of that kind of thing. So Yes, The Snowstorm. These ones you could read in January. You could read in February. You could read in December. You could read them now if you are in a very chilly place and wanting some of those reads. But like I said, you know, lots of people are going to recommend things like The Bear and the Nightingale or Spinning Silver, At the Back of the North Wind. But I just wanted to give you some other options. So I hope that you can find something here that you would enjoy. And if you have read any of these, or you can think of others that maybe I didn't mention that aren't a real common recommendation, then I would love to know, because there's probably a few out there that I haven't read yet. So I would definitely love to know if you have some that you would recommend. And I'm sure that others in the comments would like to know too. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye. And we made it. Not dark yet. I am in my pajamas.